Welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with CPA and personal financial specialist Phil Putney. Now let's get rolling with today's show. Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of the podcast. It's Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts, and we are going to talk about your dad.
That's right.
It's not your papa's retirement, not your father's retirement. This go around is the podcast topic. And Phil, basically, I've joked about it before on the show, I'm pretty sure, because I definitely remember them. I remember those Oldsmobile commercials so much. I don't know why it sticks out with me, but that slogan, that tagline, it's not your father's Oldsmobile, I still remember it to this day.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It's one of those taglines from, back in the day that kind of sticks around. We talked about the Kmart blue light specials.
Same thing. About that.
It's something you'll never forget about. So
I don't know why it's so random, but I was like late 70s, I want to say early 80s. Oldsmobile was trying to make their product line more hip, I guess, to the younger people.
Yep. Kind of move to the next generation.
Right.
And
Yeah. So we're going to do that approach with retirement conversation.
All right.
Not that
it's definitely two different worlds for retirement.
Yeah.
So
I mean, not that we're going to try to necessarily make it hip, but I mean, hey, retirement can be hip. So hey, don't count it out. You're going to be there one day.
Everyone's going to be there someday. So even those younger generations listening, that someday you might think, this isn't for me. It's going to come quicker than you know.
Yeah, I love that sometimes when people are like, boomer this or old person that, and it's like, you do realize that, especially if you're in your 20s now, let's say, that your grandma and your grandpa, your grandma was, wearing mini skirts and tie-dye outfits and probably smoked a little weed and listening to rock and roll and whatnot. So everybody's young ones and everybody's old at some point.
As much as that might freak you out, but
exactly. Yeah. Life is, everybody lives, right? Everybody does different things in life.
You go through all the stages.
Go through the stages. So let's talk about how it is different than even just, heck, Phil, even just 10 or 15 years ago, planning for retirement now is really a lot different.
It's completely different.
Let alone 20 or 30, right? So
right.
I'm just going to dive in and just start talking about some of this stuff. When we're walking away from the paycheck, there's just some things to ponder. The concept of retirement, this is kind of funny. I think this is interesting, real quick, for this diatribe that, it's only been around, 100 years ago, Phil, you worked till you died. Right?
People never retired. Yeah, retirement. There was no retirement.
There was no such
exactly.
thing.
Yeah,
it's a fairly new concept. It's kind of crazy to think about. It's really only been around since basically around the mid 30s or maybe the 40s. Somewhere in that neighborhood. Yep. When we started Social Security, it was not intended. Obviously, we've talked about that before. Typically, you actually died before you ever got Social Security anyway.
Yep, absolutely. So, when it first came out, you were fortunate if you collected it for 2, 3, 4 years. It's life expectancy actually was younger than full retirement age. So most people didn't even get it.
So again, it was really just a supplemental thing for those few that happen to live long. Right. Yep. So really, I think the concept of retirement really began to take off in the 50s. I think, mid 50s, late 50s, started to pick up steam. And then it really picked up steam. The gold watch idea, you work someplace 30 years and you retire, they give you a watch and a pension and so on.
Pensions and
picked up speed. Well, you move fast forward to the 90s. My dad retired in 94. And unfortunately passed away in 96. So he didn't live very long in retirement, but he was like, hey, every day's a Saturday, man. I'm spending money left and right, and you're busy and so on and so forth. And you're doing stuff all the time. Well, now, fast forward to today's period, one of the things that sticks out is we're living longer, we're living healthier, and more people don't want to necessarily retire. Yourself, Phil, you've talked about not wanting to necessarily retire anytime soon. So it's okay to want to work past retirement age if you want to.
Right. Well, and that's really the key is just what you said is if you want to. To me, that's what retirement is. Retirement isn't, a specific age and I'm done. You're working. Retirement is when you work because you want to, right? You've set yourself up financially to the position that now it's an option.
Right.
You work when and how much, whatever that amount is, based on what you want to do, what fits into your lifestyle and goals going forward. So, an age to me isn't as relevant as it used to be. A lot of times used to be companies kind of pushed you out at certain ages. Pensions were 65. That's when they start. That's even today, if you look at most pensions, that is retirement age and the pension is 65.
Right. Yeah.
So a lot of people kind of get that caught in their head that, well, must be it that I got to retire.
Or there's a stigma, and I think that
Right.
started to fade a little bit. But I think, for a number of years now, it's been, oh, you see somebody older working. Let's just say you saw them at Walmart doing the Walmart greeter thing, and you're
Yep.
like, oh, they must have made some mistakes because they couldn't retire, right?
Right.
We
Right.
kind of put this, well, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe they just really like talking to people, and they just don't
Sure.
want to sit at home, or maybe their spouse passed away and they're lonely. I
Yeah.
mean, there could be a myriad of reasons why we do things. And I think that is starting to fade, which is a good aspect of
Right.
retirement in the modern era, is I think people are starting to realize, hey, it's just boring. I just want to find something to do.
Right. I mean, if you think of, your working years, I mean, you were on a very structured schedule, up at whatever time, back at, 5, 6, 7 at night, whatever it is, whatever your typical day was,
Right.
it's a very structured day. You had so many days off a year, the holidays, here's the vacation, but to your point, you're retired. Hey, every day's a Saturday, which that seems great. Oh, this is awesome, and for most people, they start into it and dive in and go crazy, but then realize, okay, well, kind of get into this groove. And some people, the groove is, what, hey, I really kind of miss work. And I hear that a lot from clients, as odd as it might seem to you,
Right.
but if you didn't absolutely hate your job and you decided, yeah, I've got enough, it's time to retire,
Hmm.
there might be aspects of that job that you really kind of enjoy. The people aspect is the biggest piece.
Yeah.
I miss that, going in and talking to somebody, other than I love my spouse to death, but 24/7 is, I've got to talk to somebody else too. So,
Yeah, and the lockdowns maybe kind of showed us some of that
well, that, yep,
additionally as well. People saying, you know what, as things get more and more open and back to normal, I want to go back out and do some stuff, and maybe the
yep,
spouses are saying, I want you to as well. Or
that's
whoever
right.
that
That's
is,
right.
right? Or maybe both parties are like, oh, we got to go find something to do, and so the expense becomes an issue now. That's great, but we are finding that being retired in the modern era might actually be more expensive than when you were working, which is a little weird to say because you're going to spend.
Yep.
And things are costly. And then we're not even talking about the recent inflation stuff, just in general.
Just in general. Yeah. So, I mean, kind of a concept in retirement is, oh, I know I'm going to spend less, right? I mean, might not need two cars because we're both working now. So we just need one. And I don't have to dress up for work anymore. So I don't have the suits and the dry cleaning and,
Right.
all these different things. You might not have parking if you have to pay for parking, whatever it is. Yeah, there are probably going to be some things that you don't have for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
But with every day a Saturday, so to speak, where you've got a lot of free time, what are those hobbies you like to do? If golf, I mean, that's a common one for my clients. If they like to golf, hey, you can golf 6 days, 7 days a week if you want. That costs some money. It's not cheap to golf.
No,
So
it is
if
not.
that's your hobby, you better build that in. Have a golf budget. I've got several clients that's kind of the joke is, all right, what's my golf budget? How
Right.
much can I
Right.
spend on golf?
Yeah.
Or whatever your hobby is. I mean, it's whatever it happens to be. Make sure you understand the cost relating to that.
Yeah.
So coming back to retirement, have a real discussion on, what do I want to do? What does that retirement look like to me and to my spouse? The two of you together, if you're married, then you can better understand what the expenses are. Don't just go off an understanding, well, it's got to be, only 80% of what I was spending before.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, it's the '90s, the 2000s. It was 20% less, and yada yada yada.
Yep.
Well, not necessarily. I think you're pigeonholing yourself into that scenario that you may not want to go down, and maybe that's because, Phil, of my next point is that retirees today we face. I'm not there yet, but retirees today face more problems. Well, society in general, we face more problems maybe than ever before, but we're
Right.
juggling certainly more than ever before, right? And there's so much going on, and with technology and instant everything and fast food
Yep.
everything and so on and so forth, it really kind of can be a bit overwhelming to all the things we've got to juggle and plan for. Again, from a retirement standpoint in the 50s or 60s, hey, I got Social Security and I got a pension. I'm basically okay. I saved a little bit. Cool.
Yep.
Well, and then healthcare wasn't really nearly as costly. I mean, that's all that now is like,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a lot of different facets that now you have to be concerned with. Back in the 50s and 60s when you retired, it was the two-legged stool, really, with maybe a little third leg of whatever your savings were. But it was Social Security and the pension was pretty typical for most people that worked at some kind of a company.
Right.
In that kind of a retirement, it's maybe more comfortable because here's my fixed income. This is what I have.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're living on more of a budget. This is what I can spend. I don't have a lot of extra money to be able to spend. So you're kind of locked into this fixed income. You don't have as many options.
Right.
You don't think, at least, which now, as that's shifted, and the Social Security is still there, but the pensions have pretty much gone by the wayside.
Yep.
So you're looking more at your savings. There's a lot more that comes into that decision of how do I spend that money.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be very careful with it, because you might get that quote unquote wealth effect of thinking, man, I got $1 million. This is great.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let's do this travel, and I'm going to go golf every day, and overspend early in retirement, and you could be in trouble. So it's a much different world today. You've got to really structure that plan out to understand, what does it look like? Can I afford to do that long term?
And can you afford to manage some of the other things that have become a newer problem as well? Things like dealing with kids back at home or elderly parents because of the longevity factor. We've talked about that many times on the show, and I'm sure we'll continue to do so. You may be 70 right now, and you may be taking care of your 90-year-old parents while also helping your 30-year-old children. So
yeah, I mean, you're kind of that sandwich generation, so to speak, where you've got, you and then both ends of that coming in. And that's, again, kind of a newer scenario we see, or you've got kids that went to college later and you're still helping them pay for that. Or, you took on some college debt for them to help them go through college. So now you've got that aspect where, back to our parents and prior to that, even if you went to college, it's on your own. You got to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
It's your own. You either pay for it or you get your own loans. And so, there are many more aspects to concern. You mentioned the retirement healthcare.
Yeah,
whole different avenue to look at. I mean, again, back to the pension concept. Back at retirement, it was, well, what does the company's retirement insurance look like? I mean, it's the most companies, if you got a pension, they had insurance with Medicare, so you really didn't worry about it. It was whatever their plan was. It kind of continued on. So not so much today.
Now you've got to self-fund it. You've got the longevity factor magnifies everything, because now you're talking about longer-term healthcare issues for most of us. So there's a lot to deal with, and really that's why funding it is really the final piece of this. You've got to fund it for the longevity factor. I don't care. Look, folks, I mean, I'm in the same boat. I've got a bunch of health issues, and I've already had heart surgery, and I'm not even 50 yet. And, I was talking to my wife the other day, and my dad passed away in his 50s. My brother passed away in his 50s. I mean, I'm sorry, my dad was 60. My brother was in his 50s. Regardless, there's definitely indicators. But it doesn't mean anything, because technology, again, to our point, changes so much. Look how much we're doing artificial printing of body parts now, lungs and things of that nature. So you got to plan for 30, 40 years. Even if you're wrong, that's okay, because you're leaving something to either your spouse or your heirs. That's okay.
Yeah, and this is one of those real delicate balances. And I think, unfortunately, just human nature, we want to err on the conservative side to us to say, well, there's no way I'm making it to 90. So why would I'm not planning on leaving money to the kids, which is fine. So I'm going to spend as much as I can. Well, that's great. Understand the con to that side. What happens if you do?
If you are wrong, right?
What does that look like? So now you're 85 years old and you're still in pretty good health, but you've spent all your money and all you have is Social Security. What are you going to do?
Maybe you now are at Walmart as a greeter, not because you wanted to be, but because you have to be.
That's right. Or, what is that? Hopefully one of your kids has some room, because maybe you might have to, which isn't a great option, So, I mean, it's one of those things that you have to look at the pro and con on each side. And I mean, the other direction too, planning, I'm going to live to 100. Well, you don't want to scrimp all your life and, get to, again, 85 or 90 and all of a sudden have 2 million left and realize, we could have gone on more vacations, or we could have done, but now we've got all this money left to the kids, which might be great. Maybe that's what you plan to do, but you didn't maybe live the retirement you planned on.
Right.
And we see
Exactly.
a lot of that from maybe even our grandparents that had lived through the Depression era. So
Mhm.
they were just by nature way more conservative and didn't want to spend.
Right.
So they had a lot left, So that's where having a plan and working with an advisor to help you walk through that. And
Yeah.
it's not a set it and forget it. It's not I get to retirement. What's my plan?
Hmm.
And never look at it again until I'm 85 and now it's too late. It's here's my plan. Let's walk down that road every single year. Where are
Yeah.
we at? How are things changing? Do we need to modify investments and spending and all the different components as you go down that plan? So,
Well, I mean, as humans, we're all familiar with the concept of regret. Whatever that
yep,
might be, we don't want to, we want to try to mitigate regret as much as we can in life. We know we're going to have it. So when you're talking about that from that standpoint, if you've got a good plan in place and you're working on a good strategy, then hopefully you're maximizing the type of retirement you wanted
right.
to live while still maybe leaving something behind if that's in your game plan, and if it's
Yep.
not, again, to your point, you can ebb and flow and adjust. So retirement is completely different. More people, doing things. Again, we're healthier, we're living longer, we're more active. Even after the lockdowns or with the lockdowns aside,
Yep.
we're seeing that we're getting back out. I think we're going to probably see a pretty big boom to a lot of these things over, obviously this summer and all probably into next year as well. I think we're going to see people just
Some of that pent up demand.
right,
So,
pent
yeah.
up. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, like I don't care. The cost be damned. We're going right. We're gonna do whatever. So, and that's
Yep.
great. Just make sure just double check and make sure that you're following up on some things so that you don't have some regret later on that maybe you
Yep.
either didn't do enough or you did too much and now you've got some financial woes. So, and as always, you can kind of combat that a little bit by making sure you got a good strategy in place. Reach out to Phil if you got questions and you need help at 248-888-7530. Just always do that anyway when you're thinking about taking any kind of financial action. Check with a qualified professional. Phil's been helping people for 30 plus years. So reach out to him at
Yep.
248-888-7530. He's a CPA and a personal financial specialist. You can also stop by the website, philstaxhacks.com. And while you're there, drop us an email, shoot us a line, and we might take that question on the show, which we're going to do right now from Kate. And Kate was in Plymouth. And she says, Phil, I got a catch 22. I need some help. I have some Apple stock. I really want to offload it because I've made some pretty good money on it over the years, but I'm worried about the tax bill that it's going to create. So what's more important, capturing the gains or keeping my taxes low?
The big question always, do I want to, take the gain and pay the tax, or that tax, I don't want to pay the tax. So
Right.
it brings up an adage I use often. You don't want to let that tax tail wag the dog, so to speak. So understand it. Absolutely. Everyone hates paying taxes. It's our obligation. We have to do it.
Right.
But don't let that be the sole decision on whether you buy or sell. I mean, if your target of, selling it at a certain point was that, then sell it. I would argue probably you're not going to be in a better tax scenario than you are today to do that. So,
Yeah.
Is it going to be better 5-10 years down the road from a tax standpoint? Probably not. Who knows? We don't know for sure, but chances are it won't be.
Right.
But if you look at one exercise I walk clients through in this often is saying, okay, the tax is going to be, let's even call it 20%.
Okay.
20%, it's not of the total, it's of the gain.
Right.
So whatever the gain is, now look at that tax piece. So whatever that dollar is, take that tax dollar as a percentage of the total investment.
Okay.
So even if we have 20% gain or tax on the gain, and even if you made a 50% gain, your tax is only 10% of the total. So
okay, yeah.
if that investment drops by 10% in value, you've actually lost the same as if you sold it at a higher value. You would have more money having sold it at a higher value and paying the higher tax. Again, it comes back to running the math. We talk about it often. Understand the math of it. Don't get too concerned with, what is that tax burden? Understand it, but then put it back into perspective to what the value is today, and then make the decision. Let's capture the gain of today. Yeah, I'm going to have to pay the tax at some point. It's inevitable. It's not like you're going to avoid it.
Right.
Unless that value goes back down to what you paid for it, then no taxes.
Right.
But you lost the growth. So
we put that stigma as out there as well a lot of times too. I mean, paying taxes, think about it this way. It's not a bad thing because it means you made some money. right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If based on your plan, you were needing the money,
Right.
Once it hit a certain level or at this point, the tax is going to be what it's going to be. You can try to minimize it. There might be a couple of things you can do with spreading it over a couple of years or something of that nature, but
Right.
don't not do something just because of the tax burden.
Right. Yeah. It's the old funny thing. It's like, oh, are you a glass half full or half empty? Right. I won $100,000 in the lottery. Oh, I got to pay taxes on $100,000. Well, you never had it to begin with.
Right.
So, how do you view it? Like, what's your philosophical bent when it comes to it? Right. Are you, are you a positive or a negative kind of person? So, Katie, thanks so much for listening to the show. If you're still not sure, if you really want to talk specifically, obviously just reach out, call Phil, and have a more one-on-one conversation. 248-888-7530, or shoot him an email at philstaxhacks.com. And that's going to do it, Phil. Thanks for hanging out with me and talking about not our papa's retirement. There's a lot of elements, right, to what you do, and it's only getting more, really. I mean, every year
it's only going to get more complex. I mean, that's a discussion I have with clients all the time when we really get into planning. Is they say, I had no idea there was this much involved.
Yeah.
It's no longer just putting those retirement papers in at work and then waiting for the pension and Social Security to kick in and you're done. I mean, you've got to have a plan.
Definitely. And it's only getting more complicated. So do yourself and your retirement a favor. Have a conversation with a qualified professional. If not Phil, with somebody. But, of course, if you'd like to reach out to Phil, you can give him a jingle again, like I said, at 248-888-7530. It's on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. And you can stop by the website, philstaxhacks.com. That's philstaxhacks.com. For Phil Putney, I'm Mark Killian. We'll see you next time here.
Investment advisory services offered through AFS Wealth Management. The content of this program is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. Investments and/or investment strategies involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will achieve its objectives.